Welcome back to the Shutter Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Eli, and today I'm joined by
Clint Householder
and Katie LaBoudelet.
From the little leagues
to the pros.
This is your weekly sports show.
Welcome to the Shutter Sports Podcast.
Take a seat at the table as we discuss.
On today's episode, we will be discussing the Toronto Blue Jays offseason. Today, we'll talk about coaching and management changes, new players signed, and moves that weren't made. Here's how today's episode will work. We'll go around the table and answer the biggest questions that Jays fans have, and maybe answer, where do the Jays go from here?
Before we start, it is important to say that everything expressed in this episode is our own opinion.
Whether you agree or disagree, we invite you to join the discussion on Instagram at Shutter Sports Media or on Twitter at ShutterSportsM. Alrighty, first up, let's start quickly with coaching and management moves made at the beginning of the offseason. I'm going to throw it over to you, Katie, to talk about third base coach Luis Rivera out for Carlos Febbles and associate manager DeMarlo Hale.
All right. So the coaching changes and management moves aren't really big. Luis Rivera is out, and I know some people might be happy about that. Not like a lot of the players listen to him at third anyway. I feel like most people see the stop sign and just keep running.
Yeah.
But maybe some change on that end will help. And then associate manager, I don't think that'll make a big change. So Jays didn't do much, even though I know some of the fans probably wanted them to change up their front office and coaching staff a little bit. But that's all I really have to say about that.
I don't know. Luis Rivera retired, I believe, so I understand that change, and obviously first base coaches and third base coaches need good chemistry with the team, but I feel like you can get that with most coaches you find in baseball, especially base coaches, as they're not controlling too much. Associate manager, I don't know too much about the new guy. I was just a little upset with the choice to keep the same hitting coach. Last season they had many offensive problems, and they went with the decision to keep Guillermo Martinez in the staff. What do you think about that, Clint?
I mean, obviously, their hitting was a major problem or part of their collapse in the playoffs, and I think that was an area that they should have looked to improve, and as we're going to talk about later, they didn't do it a lot by gaining bats, so an area that they could have looked was in the coaching to help train the players that they do have better, and I was a little disappointed that they didn't at least do that, because I don't think their later moves were the greatest. Alrighty,
so let's talk a bit about the players they did sign this offseason. And we'll start with the re-signing of Kevin Kiermaier.
Honestly, I like the move. He plays great defense in center field. He's not a huge impact bat, but he was good for the chemistry last year. I was surprised that they got him back. I thought he was a Yankee. At the end of the year, I was certain that he was going to leave. So I'm really happy to have him back. I think he's a great piece. He doesn't improve the team upon last year, but it also helps us from not being worse defensively.
Yeah, I definitely like him. He's a lock in the outfield. You greatly improve your outfield. It's going to be good. He doesn't make errors, and he makes the catches that no one else would make.
Yeah.
And it's rare that you get a guy who's so willing to bat in the 9-hole and actually do a very good job of it. He was one of the better hitters sometimes. And to be able to turn that lineup over and hopefully get your big bats at the top of the lineup, it's a good move.
Yeah, he's a guy with 4-time gold gloves, a platinum glove, a career WAR of 3.55, and that is almost all defensively. And then last season, he had an OPS plus of above 100, meaning he was above average hitter, and that's not even what they're signing for. So I thought it was a great re-signing. He kind of holds that outfield together, I find, and just makes everybody look better. Alrighty, for our next discussion, we will be discussing a new signing coming from the New York Yankees, Isiah Kiner-Falefa.
I don't really know what was up with this one. It seemed like a very, very weird fit. They have enough infielders. The Kevin Biggio's right there.
You want another guy who can do everything just a little bit worse at some positions.
Yeah, they don't need another utility guy who's primary second baseman and isn't really a great hitter. They have plenty.
Yeah, and they already had Witt. I think it would have made more sense. They had Witt. Sorry, it would have made more sense just to re-sign him. He's already known in the clubhouse. The one thing about this move though that I think opens up more possibilities is now they could trade. I've seen Schneider thrown around. I've seen Santiago Espinal thrown around in trades, and now it opens that up if they want to trade those guys and they have someone that can play second base on a regular basis and they can look to improve their lineup elsewhere. But I don't think it's a real game changer for their off season. It's not a huge impact move. I don't know.
It's weird to acquire him as a trade piece too, during the off season. Just seems like a waste of money.
Yeah, the guy's WAR was 0.1, so you're not signing him for his offense. His OPS plus was 78, so you're not signing him for his defense or his offense.
No. It's just, it's a weird move altogether.
He won the Heart and Hustle Award in New York, but I don't see how that's going to help you.
He's going to help the clubhouse. He's a clubhouse guy.
He's going to sit there smiling, like big bright smile, but we don't need smiles on the bench. We need runs on the board.
He's got big heart.
Bring back Kawasaki if we want smiles on the bench.
The next signing we will be discussing this offseason is one of my favorites, and that is Justin Turner.
I mean, I like the move. It's always good to add a veteran bat to the lineup, and like he kind of replaces Belt. Like I don't know if they're gonna end up re-signing Belt too, but he kind of replaces Belt, but from the right side. He had a really good year last year in Boston, and like he's of course got the pedigree like that when he played in LA. So like he's shown that he can do stuff in the playoffs. He's shown that he's a consistent bat, and it's always good to add those.
Yeah, exactly. Like he has the experience too. Like no one on this team being so young, they haven't gone very far in the playoffs. So it would be nice to have someone who's maybe gone past the wild card, and hopefully he can lead this team to a further run.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people complain like he's old, he's washed. His OPS hasn't dropped below 788 in the last 9 or 10 years, I want to say. And his last year's OPS at 800 would have been one of the best on the teams of players who had 400 at-bats at least. We know Brandon Belt obviously had a great year when he was hitting, but he was a platoon guy and didn't get too much time. The other thing I like about Justin Turner is he slugs against lefties. The Jays, for some reason, even though mostly being a righty bat team, had trouble against lefties, which is something you don't want to see. And Justin Turner takes advantage of it. You can see the ball better as a righty against a lefty, and his slugging percentage goes up increasingly against lefties.
I think he's also a good like right-handed bat to mentor like the younger guys like Bichette and Vladdy, like help them with their struggles against left-handed batters or left-handed pitchers rather.
Yeah, I would say as long as his OPS probably stays above 780, I feel like he's the kind of guy who will still get above 20 home runs, around 100 RBIs, and be a perfect fit for a one-year rental at third base as the Jays look to call up some prospects in the future.
And going to the old thing, like that's what everyone said when Belt came, and then everyone loved him. So like Toronto fans really just need to calm down and let the season happen, because I feel like that's the biggest thing with like Toronto fans at any sport. They're just so quick to hate everything. Like just maybe see how it goes.
And I just marketed him as a third baseman, but I realized I think they're going to be using him as a DH. But he also played second base last year, which I'd love to see a bit more of. And then also he can play first base if Vladdy ever gets injured or needs a rest day. He's just a kind of good utility guy to have in that infield. Finally, we have Yarel Rodriguez, who has no MLB experience, but he's played a bit in Japan and Korea, and I believe the Cuban League. He's kind of been everywhere, and his stats are really interesting.
What are his stats for the fans?
It's a little confusing to read as it jumps around from where he was, but the major idea is in his last 2 seasons, his ERA has been under 2.
That's a good number.
That's a very good number.
I believe he won the Cuban setup pitcher of the year last year. I could be wrong, but I believe that was the award he won. I know he won a relief pitching award last year, and I know he has I believe he has spent time starting earlier, but he's moved to like more of a bullpen role like as of recent years. He should help. The one thing I'm a little concerned on is it's like a 5-year deal, so they're really like gambling that he will be good. So it'll either be a great deal or a terrible deal, and like hopefully it's the earlier one. But yeah,
I mean any deal to change up that bullpen should be good for the Jays. Like something needs to happen there, and I mean we've seen pitchers come to the Jays and be better after. Like our pitching coaches are pretty good. We have taken that gamble with other pitchers and it's not panned out. Rio got injured, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. But I like it. I hope it'll be good. I see it panning out maybe.
Yeah, in 56 games, having a 1.15 ERA and a 0.91 WHIP, even in the Japanese league, we've seen a lot of success from these guys. We saw Yamamoto come over this offseason. We saw guys like Cody Senga just a few years ago, and nobody seems to be having too many issues or problems yet. The level of baseball in Japan and Korea is so high. Yeah, I just think it's a great signing overall for the team. So that wraps it up for the Jays' most important signings. They signed a lot of guys to some minor league contracts or invited them out to spring training, but that's not overly important. So now we'll be discussing the moves the Jays didn't make. And I'm going to start this by saying we're not talking about Ohtani. I don't think he was ever really going to come to the Jays. We were leverage for the Dodgers, so let's just cut him out of this conversation because I'm tired of hearing Jays fans go, we didn't get Ohtani. Atkins sucks at his job. Like, no, he wasn't coming to Toronto. So let's start with you, Clint, about a few players you're hoping to see in Toronto, and it doesn't look like they're going to be coming?
I just like to start first, like on the Atkins thing and people like complaining that he didn't get Ohtani. My like issue with it isn't that he didn't get Ohtani. It's that like I feel like he was so focused on getting Ohtani when like Ohtani never really wanted to come here and was just using us as leverage, and then he was so focused, and then by the time that Ohtani like signed somewhere else, then he was like already late on negotiating with everyone else, and then he wasn't able to get any of the next level guys. Like I know Bellinger's still out there, and like obviously that's one that I think could be like a big impact for the Jays, but like I don't know where they slot him in, because like they already have the outfield spots locked up with Kiermaier, Springer, and Varsho, so I don't know where they would really slot him in. They have a DH like with Turner now. So it seems like that ship's kind of sailed.
And he plays first too, but
you already have Vladdy,
exactly.
so it's like every spot that Bellinger plays is already like taken up on the Jays. And like though I think he would be an upgrade, I feel like that ship's kind of sailed. I don't know.
I would have liked Bellinger instead of Kiner-Falefa or instead of Turner. Like he kind of fits that spot. I like Turner, but if they were going to do that, they would have had to do it before they got either of those guys, I feel like. Now it just isn't a good fit, but I would have liked to have Bellinger for sure.
Yeah, Bellinger would have been a great signing. Obviously, he's had his ups and downs throughout his career, but he's mainly been on his ups, and I have a feeling he'll stay there now that he's kind of more established himself in the league. He's an amazing defender. Like, I don't think they play him in the outfield too much anymore. He's had shoulder issues. He can dislocate his shoulder fairly easily, but he's one of the best first basemen in the league. Vladdy is one of the worst first basemen in the league. I would have maybe even liked to see a possible transition of Vladdy back to third. I know he didn't play too well in his original season, but if you're bringing in a big bat like that, it could have made a difference possibly. He's a lefty, which also the Jays are really looking for, but he was asking for, and he still is asking for, way too much money.
I'd just like to say, if the Jays don't get him, I hope he goes back to the Cubs. I liked him there.
I see him re-signing with the Cubs. He likes his white and blue mixed in with a little bit of red.
Sure does.
One player I wanted them to target was Jock Peterson. He's
the budget Bellinger.
Exactly. He's like the budget Bellinger. He's a power lefty bat. Like I know his stats last season weren't the greatest, but like he's proven, and like that lineup last year in San Francisco wasn't like the greatest. So like I think in Toronto, like on paper it should be a better lineup, and he should be able to like shouldn't be targeted as much by the opposing pitchers, and he should be able to like hit later and really have an impact.
I thought if Bellinger was asking for too much money, Peterson was a great option for them. I think his OPS was around 750 last season. He still hits home runs. He's a very positive guy. You never hear about issues with Jock in the clubhouse, which I think is something important still for this season to keep the flow of things right. But I thought that would have been another lefty bat that could have been important. I also thought Jorge Soler, even though he's a righty, would have been a great acquisition, but he just got locked up by the San Francisco Giants.
Another former Cub.
Soler played with the Cubs?
Yeah.
He
World
did.
Series
He
run,
did.
no? Yeah. I mean, I would have, like, he was good, and even last season in 500 appearance, he batted 250, which, like, for the Jays, not bad.
Yeah.
But I find him to be, just from watching him sometimes, quite inconsistent. Like, I don't know, so are all the Jays, though, so, like, we're used to it. I don't think he was the best fit. Like, I know he would just be a DH, but they seem to, with all the utility players they have, move around DH a lot anyway, and so I don't think the Jays are ever going to be a team that just has one singular DH, so I don't know. It would have been interesting to see on the Jays, but I don't know if it would have been the right fit.
Yeah, he's been an inconsistent guy throughout his career. He's had years where he's had 48 home runs. Last season he had 36. But over the last few seasons, he's been consistently fairly good. And I don't think you're ever signing that guy to be consistent. You're signing him because he mashes and he hits home runs when he does play.
Yeah, and he has moved around a lot, too.
Yeah, he had that great World Series run with Atlanta.
Interesting career for him, honestly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm honestly a bit of a Marlins fan too. So like I watched him last year, and like he was like one of the best hitters on the Marlins. Like Arise was like the contact guy he was on all the time, but like when they needed like a home run, like Soler came in clutch a lot of times, and I wanted that in Toronto. I know he's on like a little bit of a bigger deal now that he's in San Francisco than what the Jays opted for signing with Turner, but I feel like he really could have made an impact, and like he could have been the power bat that I was hoping Chapman was going to be. But
so let's talk a bit about where the Jays are going from here this season, because we've seen guys like Bo and Vlad, their contracts expire in 2026, and these are two guys that Jays fans seem to just not understand are going to be signed on massive contracts. And it's going to be tough for the Jays to put both of them out at the same time. I think if the Jays don't make improvements this season, we're going to see at least one or both of them walk for money or for also winning. You want to win in the playoffs throughout your career. And the Jays haven't made it past the wild card game with them. So what do you think the Jays are doing from here to try to keep Vlad and Bo to stay in Toronto?
It is hard to try and keep them, but also try and compete, because you have to kind of save that money for when that you do want them to re-sign, but you also have to get some guys and try and get some playoff pushes and runs before then. They have to make it past the wild card to keep those guys. Otherwise, I think they are going to walk. They're seeing no improvement. But if I can go on my rant for Toronto fans are the worst at anything.
Hit it. Toronto fans are the worst. I want to hear all about this.
They just have zero patience. If you're in Toronto, you have to be winning. They have no patience for a rebuild, so no team in Toronto is ever going to be good or make it past the first round. This applies to hockey. This applies to baseball. If you don't rebuild, you're not going to go anywhere. And they just don't have the patience to rebuild because the fans are at their throats if they don't do well. And so no team could ever rebuild in Toronto. You have a losing season, you're losing all of your fans because they're all casuals, because for most times it's the only professional league in Canada is in Toronto. So you have like the entire province and the entire country behind your back, which can be really good. We've seen players love that. However, the pressure and the lack of patience from the fan because they're all casuals is just too much for a lot of players and a lot of teams. They just face so much pushback because there's zero patience in Toronto.
I think that could also be like part of a reason why like none of these like big impact bats are signing in Toronto, because it's a pressure zone. Like the fans are always like super critical of the players. Like they're sometimes like they're so like, oh, we love this guy, and then it's like they suck for a week and it's like, this guy's the worst player on our team. Like I actually hate him. Can we trade him? It's like it's just like such
You
a
see that everywhere though.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a
like-
lot in
it's
Toronto
intense.
though.
Look at Trey Turner in the Phillies. The man was getting booed and booed and booed
Yeah, but
until one day they decided, you know what? Let's see what happens when we give him a standing ovation as he comes up to bat.
I think-
And he went on an absolute tear.
Philly's the Toronto of the States.
When was the last time that like Jays fans or like Leafs fans or any of them like turned while a player was still struggling? I was at the Samsonov game when he came back, and they weren't cheering until after he started making saves.
I don't see issues with Jays fans once the player's on the field that
No,
time.
they don't boo,
Yeah.
but they are in every comment section just hating on their own
Yeah.
team. Like, maybe be supportive.
I feel like that's every comment section though.
Yeah.
There's just no patience in Toronto.
Like Jays fans do have no patience to let a team rebuild and let a team function and let a team get to a point where they can win. But at the same time, I don't always agree with the moves Atkins is making right now to win. I find the lineup is very similar to last season, and 92 wins won't cut it. Right now, the Jays are ranked 10th in the power rankings, and that has them over the entire league, and that has them missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
You're in an awful division to be in right now. You have the Rays, you have the Orioles, you have the Yankees. Boston has made
They
no
won't be
moves
this
this season.
year.
Boston's going to be
can-
absolutely abysmal.
They got Von Grissom, guys.
This is about to be one of the worst years in Boston we've seen in a while, which is a winning franchise. Sad for them to see that they've because they have no direction right now.
Maybe they'll actually rebuild.
I don't know. I
You're
think
going to rebuild with Trevor Story on your 10-year contract. Rafael Devers expiring soon.
Well, it'll be a short rebuild. They're just a down year so they can hopefully go up.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're like more competitive than you're giving them credit. Like
yeah,
I think
so.
I think Costas is really good at first base, and like I think for the end of the season he was better than Vladdy was at the end of the year. If I'm not wrong,
He
But-
definitely was.
Yeah.
Like, if you're
And-
playing in Boston, you always have a chance.
Yeah, and like Devers is good, and like a lot of their good guys are lefties, and like it's easier to hit a home run in Boston because like the pesky poles, like it's easier for lefties. So I don't know. I don't think they're a good team. Like I don't think they'll actually compete for the playoffs, but like I wouldn't treat them as an easy win.
And talking about the Jays rebuild really quick, like it should have gone into full swing in 2019. Like they held on to Smoke and other players for like far too long.
Yeah.
It should have been a full rebuild when you got Biggio, Bichette, and Vladdy coming up. But they were so excited about these prospects, like, oh, they'll lead us to win. They're 20. They're
Yeah.
not going to lead you to a championship. And now they're all 25, 27. They never rebuilded, and now it's too late because they're going to lose all the players that they were supposed to rebuild around.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the only guy in recent memory I've seen that came up and immediately pretty much, like, not the only person, but got his team to a championship was Juan Soto, and he is one of the best hitters in baseball.
He was linked to the Jays for a bit, like in the offseason. Like there was
Yeah.
a time where we thought we were going to get him.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how
That would've
real
been a dumb
I don't know how
trade.
real that was,
It's a
but
stupid
Everyone was
trade.
linked.
He's not, because he wouldn't re-sign with the team.
Yeah.
He's on an expiring deal, and I'd love to see him in a Jays uniform after he signs in the offseason. But he's a guy who's going to have maybe a contract like not quite as big as Ohtani. He's not a two-way player, but he's going to be up there. He had his off year with a 778 OPS in 22 when he was with San Diego, and 894 when he was in Washington, and that's an off year for him. His career stats are insane. He has a career OPS plus of 157, a career OPS of 946, a career batting average of 284, and has already hit 160 home runs. And he's only, how old is he?
He's
25.
Yeah.
I mean,
25 years old.
I know he probably wouldn't have signed like here long term, but like I would be fine with giving him like a ginormous deal because he's consistent and he's shown that he can be like he can help carry his team to a World Series. Like he already did that when he was like 20.
Yeah.
Like he's already shown that he can, and like I would sacrifice either Bo or Vladdy for him. Like I'm going to be completely honest. Like if we signed Soto and then couldn't re-sign, like if we lost one of Bo or Vladdy to free agency in 2026, like I would be fine with that move. I think that's an improvement in my opinion.
It's an interesting take.
Yeah, a lot of the guys we're discussing right now haven't shown many defensive cares in the world at all.
Yeah.
And that's a major issue I see with the Jays too. Is yes, they had trouble hitting last season, but their infield is going to be abysmal this year. Vladdy, one of the worst first basemen in baseball. Second base. Who's starting there? Who do we want to say?
Kevin Biggio.
It's not Kevin Biggio. I'm going...
Davis Schneider.
I think it's going to be Davis Schneider to start the year. Nothing special, but he's not a weakness. Bo Bichette.
Bit of a
Next to Matt Chapman. Next to one of the best third basemen in the league. Looks awful. What do you think happens when you stick Kiner Falefa and Bo Bichette next to each other?
Or even Turner. Like,
Yeah.
he won't be there, but
Honestly, teams could bunt it right to Bo Bichette and he'd make a sailing throw each time. He tries to play hero too often. When you watch him play, yeah, he looks good when he makes the play, but you watch a proper shortstop and they make that play easily because they actually get to the ball and it's a routine play. I don't care. I don't want to see him backhand and see his hair flow in the wind and he makes this cool jump throw. I want to see him get to the ground ball beforehand, plant, and throw. Like, it drives me crazy watching him play because half the plays that we see the Jays repost on Instagram or repost on Twitter are plays that every shortstop should be making much easier.
he's the Kevin Pillar of the infield.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Great take. And now Matt Chapman isn't there. You don't have somebody good to his right. I think we're going to see major defensive issues.
The outfield should be really good though. Like that should be one of the best.
When the ball rolls all the way to the outfield, they'll get it in quick.
When the single rolls to Varsho and left, don't take second.
Speaking of Varsho, he's one of my key players to watch this season. And in his rookie season, he looked absolutely fantastic. And obviously that isn't what we saw this 2023 season. And I'm hoping for a big bounce back season from him.
It's not even like he was a bad player last year, though. He did, I found in those clutch moments, it was mostly him.
Clutch moments isn't what I was going to bring up, but keep going.
Yeah, it's not like he was a consistent player, but he was there for the team, and they would have won less games if he wasn't playing. But
launch angle. If you compare his rookie season, where he was great, or I guess not technically his rookie season, but a season where he played 151 games. If you compare his first 3 seasons to last season, his exit velocity was up. He was putting the ball in the outfield more. He was just doing it all at the wrong launch angle. And if he does improve a launch angle, I see a guy who's hitting over 30 home runs this season. And I'm really upset that Guillermo Martinez is still their hitting coach because obviously they couldn't improve that during the season. Hopefully they did it this offseason because he's a guy with major potential, and I loved that trade when it went down. But so far, all we've seen from Varsho is some defense and a few clutch moments.
That's what I was going to say. It's almost like you want a hitting coach that'll change that.
Even without a hitting coach change, he should be better this year than last year because 2 years ago he was in the NL, and then last year he swapped to the AL. And especially for a younger player, that's a tougher transition to make. We've seen veterans struggle with that. But he went from the Diamondbacks to the Blue Jays, and there's more out of division matchups and stuff like that. But still, it's still a change, and I think he will be more used to it now.
You said younger player. He's way younger than I thought. I did not realize he was 27.
He also can play catcher. He used to play catcher in...
he's our E-bug.
Yeah, so he's our third catcher.
Another key guy I think we need to watch this year is Alek Manoah. Obviously, we saw as soon as the new pitching rules went in, big boy got tired real quick. And I think that's going to be an issue for
No, did you see that picture of him over the summer? He's looking thinner.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
he's back, guys.
But I think we would have seen this issue with a lot of pitchers in the past. So I'm going to bring up CC Sabathia just as a quick comparison. Another big guy, had an insane career. When they tried to have CC Sabathia lose weight, his velo went down and everybody was just hitting his balls. So he needed to gain weight. But he's a guy who I don't think would have been successful in today's MLB anymore. You have so little time in between when you can pitch, and nobody practiced really to do that. And I think it wasn't a skill issue for Manoah as much he was out of shape. And Manoah, he's a big guy. He's what, 6'6"?
Something like that, I think.
Yeah, he's a very tall man. The ball's getting to the plate fairly fast. I think we're going to see not quite the year he had in 2022, but I think we're going to see a bounce back year from Manoah. And Jays fans need to understand that that could be a whip just slightly above 1, an ERA under 4. That's a good year for a guy who really struggled last year.
Yeah, like you said, I think fans need to temper their expectations. I don't think he's going to be terrible. He's not going to be Cy Young contender like he was 2 years ago. I think he will be a decent starter, and I think that's a good that would be a good starting point for him, because it's it's a tough change to go from pitching one way your whole life to then suddenly being okay, you have to pitch way faster now, or not velocity wise, but between pitches. So I think he will be better this year, and then I think he'll be even better next year. I think it's just a change for him.
And I think that's all the Jays need. They just need a solid lineup. They don't need 5 all-stars. That's, again, what Toronto fans don't realize is your whole team is not going to be all-stars. Some people are just going to be above average, and that is okay because it's baseball. It's a whole team. You can't just have all-stars on the team. You look at the Rays, they are not a big, in the past, they were not a big budget team. You don't have to have a team full of all-stars. You can just have some solid guys. And I think if Alek Manoah is a solid pitcher this year, they'll do well.
Yeah, even if we look at the Rays last season, Rosarena was really only their key name that they had to the team.
Yandy Diaz.
Yeah.
Yandy Diaz is the most underrated player in baseball.
Yandy was
Every
great.
year, his OPS is at the top of the league, and nobody talks about him.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yandy was so much better than Vladdy last year. I know Vladdy's such a bigger name, but Yandy was better than Vladdy, and I don't want to hear Jays fans say he wasn't.
The Rays, Rays are starting to become big names because they keep going deep in the postseason. They're just a good team.
No, but Diaz never gets any respect because he's not a guy who's going to hit. He had 22 home runs. That's great. But I don't think we've ever seen him hit over 30 home runs. But his OPS is always very high. Last year, it took a jump. But let me pull this up. The year before that, 824, 740, 814, 816. He has been a key piece in the Rays playing so well, and he doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
Very true.
And on the rotation thing, I don't think the Jays have a bad rotation. I'm kind of comfortable with it. Gausman is he was probably the second best pitcher in the AL last year behind Cole. He's elite. And then Bassett, he can pitch fairly well. Barrios, I kind of like. I know a lot of fans aren't huge on Barrios, but I think he's got good potential, and he is pretty good now. Kikuchi's not terrible, and with Manoah, I think they have a solid 5 that can be good. And I don't know where they'd improve that. Rodriguez?
Yeah. No, he's going to be bullpen.
Yeah, he's more bullpen. He could pitch if someone goes down.
Yeah,
so,
he could be the 6th man if they need it.
And then they have Tiedemann, so
true.
they could call him up if they wanted.
Yeah,
at some point.
it's a solid rotation of teams that have done well in the past.
It's a great one in baseball. I'm not going to say one of the better ones in baseball because I don't have a list of each rotation up. Yeah. But maybe we'll see, hopefully, some bounce back years from guys like Nate Pearson. Yeah. He's been talked about for so many years now, and it feels like he hasn't been given quite the great opportunity.
Is he in the bullpen now?
He was moved there last year.
Yeah. I like him in the bullpen. He throws hard.
Yeah.
And the Jays don't have a Chapman-type pitcher who can just throw fireballs in there late in the game.
Yeah.
They tried to get that last year with Hicks, and he's too inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hicks is a guy I've been watching for a long time as a Cardinals fan, and he's had his good years, but he's nothing to drive home about. He's not the player. He's not a piece you need to build your bullpen around, per se. Yeah. He can close. He's a good middle guy, and he throws the ball hard. But he's not a guy I'm upset to see that they didn't re-sign.
Yeah, I think if they can get Romano and Pearson at the back end of their bullpen, they'll do well.
Plus Rodriguez too. I think it should be better than last year. I don't know.
Yeah.
Speaking of Romano, I think this is going to be one of our last few seasons where we see him at a great level. There's very few closers that can be good for such a long time. We saw it in Mariano Rivera. We see it in guys like Aroldis Chapman now, who's still great. Kenley Jansen. But a closer kind of has its time with a team for the most part. Eventually, guys are going to see him too much. We already see Romano not being super effective against the Yankees. Judge in specifics. Like if Judge and Romano are up, Judge is almost always winning that battle. And I think we're starting to see Romano get used a bit too much. And especially against teams in the AL East, they've seen him enough that he's not this big weapon anymore to close these games.
That's why I think if you get someone with a higher velo to kind of pair with him, it would offset. Like I know now people just watch video and they know exactly who they're going to face before they get up to the plate. But still, if you can offset someone with some heat beforehand and then throw Romano in or vice versa, like just to not always have that same matchup and mix around velos, it might.
He's still a guy I'd love to see in the coming years, but I think they need to start using him a little smarter, especially against the teams in the AL East. Because as you see pitchers more, you know what's coming. And if you only want him pitching to 3 batters, and the guy, how many pitches does he throw? 3?
I think so.
Yeah, like 2 mainly and then 3.
Yeah, he mainly throws 2 pitches. You can kind of start to guess what comes.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be a good look, especially on a team where you're going to need a closer this season. I see a lot of close games in the Jays' future.
Yeah.
Alrighty, to quickly wrap things up, we're going to just talk about where we see the Jays ending in the AL East this year. And we'll start with Clint on that.
I'm going to go like 3rd, maybe 4th in the division. I know like Tampa was better than them this year, but like McClanahan's out for a while, and like we don't know what's going on with Franco. Like he won't be there all year. And like I know they have some like younger pieces coming up the middle, but I don't know if they're like proven yet. Like I don't think you can like the Jays did that with like Bo Bichette and Vladdy when they came up, where they're like relying on a young player to like carry them. And I just don't think that's a great like idea. So I think the Jays could be ahead of them, but again, it's the Rays. Like you can't ever predict the Rays to be bad. Like they still have Randy, they still have Yandy, so I could see that being like a flip-flop. I feel like the 3 to 4 race will be close, but I don't see the Jays being better than Baltimore or New York. Like I feel like the Yankees, like they added Soto, and I feel like that's just like such an impact bat for the Yankees.
It's a cheat code when you add another big lefty bat to Yankees Stadium.
Like Soto and Judge together, it's like a better combo than like I think anyone on the Jays, like on the hitting side, like by far. And then like pitching wise, like Garrett Cole's still better, and I like Nestor, and like I don't know, I feel like they're a better team. And then like also like the Orioles, like they were the best team in the AL last year in the regular season, and then they added Corbin Burns. Like I don't think they're going to be above them.
They added a closer too, didn't they? Who did they get?
I don't know if they did. I know that like Batista's out this year. I don't know who they brought in to replace him, but
My one thing with the Orioles is they're young. Like last season was not exactly supposed to happen that way. Like they overachieved for sure, and we'll see how like with the Jays they could not consistently overachieve. And so I know they added a lot in the offseason, but AL East is always a flip-flop between like 4th and 2nd.
Yeah, I just feel like Baltimore, like they have a lot of young pieces that are like key contributors for them, but they also have like some veteran presences like Mountcastle and like Hayes and them and Santander in the locker room, and I just feel like they're just a better team all around. And like their bullpen was good last year. Like I know they had Batista. I believe he's out all year, so that's like a key loss. But like I don't know, they should be a good enough team that shouldn't like really tank their season.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my quick breakdown of the AL East. Red Sox are gonna be terrible. I have no doubt in my mind that they have a lot of good young talent, but that team has no pitching staff now. They're not going to be good. Next, I'm going to talk about the Rays. I think they are a bit overhyped, but I'm not going to put this out there that they're going to come forth. We've seen in the past a lot of times the Rays are under talked about, and then they go on to make it very deep in the playoffs. But this season, I think is different. I don't see them making it too far. I think they're overhyped. I think they lost a few guys. I know they didn't have Tyler Glasnow for long last season, but he is now in the Dodgers white and blue. And I don't think he's the key piece, but I see them not meeting their full potential or going as far as people say they're going to go. I also think the Yankees are being talked about slightly too much. Time and time again, we hear the Yankees are supposed to be better than the Jays. The Yankees are supposed to be better than the Jays. But the Yankees seem to be failing in the past 10 years. They always have problems with injuries, and I think that's going to be the same thing that we see this season. They could have a massive comeback year. Their pitching staff is looking good. They have Rodon. They have Cortez. They got
Stroman.
They got Stroman. They have a lot of highs, but I can also see those guys turning into a lot of lows like they have in the past. Carlos Rodon is one of those deals. That hasn't really panned out at all yet. The Jays, obviously, we've talked about. I think I've talked enough about the Jays. I can see them ending up in the 4th, 3rd, or 2nd spot. And the Orioles are ultimately the best team in the AL East. They dominated last season with such a young team. They now have playoff experience. They signed Corbin Burns, glorified reliever, but a great pitcher. I think the Orioles are going to be on top easily.
I honestly don't know if the Jays even make the playoffs this year. Like the AL is looking tough, and like I wouldn't be confident predicting them because I think Baltimore is ahead of them. I think I'm higher on the Yankees and the Rays than you are, but I don't think it's easy to say that take the Jays over them. Like the Rangers, the Astros, and the Mariners, I think should all be better than the Jays this year. And then like there's the team from the Central makes it, so there's like one less spot. So
Literally.
Yeah, you're definitely higher on the Yankees in Tampa than I am, but I see Orioles as my clear number 1, Baltimore as my clear last place, and Tampa, Yankees.
Try that again.
Boston, what did I say?
you said
Baltimore.
Baltimore's my clear last place.
Baltimore in clear first, Boston in clear last, and then those other 3 teams are going to be a mix. It's a dogfight of a division. I don't think anybody can truly predict who's going to come 2nd, 3rd, or 4th in that division. I think first is a little easier. But these are all teams that have seen so many ups and downs and changes. I think it's going to be a crazy year, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm not even like set on first. Like I think Boston probably will come last, but in this division, you never know who's going to come first. And I feel like Baltimore was a surprise last year, but who knows what they're going to do this year. I know they definitely reinforced and they will be good. But again, it's a dogfight of a division, and I think anyone could come 1st to 4th. With less games within your own division now, it might be a little easier to find like who's the better team as the season progresses, because you're not like just fighting against your own division the whole time. But I do still think it's one of the most competitive divisions in baseball, and it is very hard to predict. But saying that, I'm with Clint on like 3 or 4 probably for the Jays.
Yeah.
Hopefully a wild card appearance, but who knows at this point.
And then also, we were talking about Bautista, their all-star closer, being injured and out for the year. They replaced him with Craig Kimbrell.
Yeah, that's a good look.
Yeah.
He's kind of old. I don't know.
He's old. He's had his
He
ups
scares
and
me
downs.
sometimes.
But we saw him on the Phillies last year, deep into the postseason. I think he's still an effective enough guy. And I think as a 1-year rental, I don't know how long his contract is. Even if it's longer, he could be a cool setup guy. I think it was a smart signing. Alrighty, we talked about some of the Jays re-signings and Kevin Kiermaier. We talked about some new signings and guys like Justin Turner, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and Yarel Rodriguez, along with guys we thought they missed, and also where we see the Jays going from here. It's been a lovely episode, so I'd like to thank you for joining us on the Shutter Sports podcast. Be sure to follow/subscribe wherever you find your podcast, and don't be shy to join the discussion on any platform at Shutter Sports Media. Before I go into the final little call, I want to get a quick round of applause. And I'd also like to thank the producer of this episode, Cam Sterling.
Woo.
Until next time, I'm your host, Eli, joined by
Clint Householder.
And Katie LeBoudelaire.
and this has been the Shutter Sports Podcast.